Hey there friends, it's Laurie. Today I'm sharing 12 of my favorite farmhouse inspired DIYs. I really hope you enjoy them, so let's get busy. I'm starting my DIY by using the back side of this Dollar Tree tag sign. I'm removing the jute hanger and I'm actually going to replace it when I'm at the end of the project. Using my white acrylic paint, I'm painting the front and the sides. With my sign dry, I'm now going to add an accent around the edge using my pencil. I'm rubbing the edge of my pencil along the edge of the sign, and I'm not being that careful, I'm just kind of rubbing it along. I'm then rubbing my finger through the pencil mark and giving my sign a light gray edge. If you prefer to use black paint, that will work just as well. It's just personal preference, and I like the smoky gray look that this gives to the sign. I'm adding the wooden word home that I found at the Dollar Tree, and I'm giving it a coat of black paint. Now that my home sign is dry, I'm going to take just an old piece of sandpaper and I'm going to distress the edges. Once again, I'm not being super fussy. I'm just running my sandpaper along the outside edges of the letters. I'm attaching my word home to a piece of burlap, so I'm measuring the burlap across the sign and then I'm cutting it to size. I want more of a rustic look, so I'm cutting the finished edges off of my burlap. I'm then fraying a little bit off each side. Using my glue gun, I'm wrapping my burlap around the side, and then I'm hot gluing each edge into place. To add my word home, I'm adding some hot glue to the back of it, and then I'm centering it in the middle of the burlap. To make the base for my wreath, I'm using a canning jar lid, but you can always use the cardboard insert from a spool of ribbon. I don't want the silver showing through, so I'm giving mine a coat of white acrylic paint, and you can always use white spray paint. I'm using the leaves from these Dollar Tree amaranthus as the sprigs for my wreath. I'm using 3 bunches, and I'm just removing the leaves from the stems. Adding them to my ring, and I have it sitting on a piece of burlap just because my background was white. I'm starting to hot glue them at an angle around the top of the ring. And all I'm doing is continuing to hot glue them around the top until my ring is completely covered. With my top complete, I'm now attaching them to the side of the ring to cover the base. When that's done, I turn my wreath over and then using some of the shorter pieces, I'm hot gluing them around the top edge, hiding where I originally started gluing on my pieces of wreath. With my wreath complete, I'm using some Dollar Tree buffalo check ribbon and I'm making a simple bow. When I'm done, I'm using the same jute that I used in my first video and I'm making the same type of bow. This time I'm making 4 loops. I'm using another long piece of jute. I'm tying my bow together and this way I'll end up having 4 tails. I'm securing both of my bows together with a piece of floral wire. And then I'm wrapping the 2 pieces of wire around the top part of my wreath and securing my bow into place. I'm replacing the jute hanger that I had removed at the beginning. I then used my glue gun and placed a generous amount on the back of the holder and attached it in place. And with that, my farmhouse home sign is ready to hang. For my next DIY, I'm starting out with these 2 wooden crates from the Dollar Tree and 4 wooden beads. I'm attaching both sides together using my Star Bond glue. Then using the same glue, I'm attaching a bead in each of the corners. The glue sets up really quickly and now it's ready for a coat of white acrylic paint. With my paint dry, I'm adding a coat of gray paint to accent the outside edge. As an accent on the top of my display shelf, I found this cute little sign at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to paint the outside edges with the same matching gray paint. When I'm done, I'm using some of the buffalo check ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and I'm giving each of them an accent. I'm using some Dollar Tree dice to spell out the word farm, and when I don't have them on display, this makes the perfect holder for them. When I'm done, I'm then using my glue gun to attach the two pieces together. To make my farm dice, I'm using 4 of the foam dice from the Dollar Tree. I've painted them white, and using these poster letters from the Dollar Tree, I'm spelling out the word farm. Using the same buffalo check ribbon, I added a simple accent by wrapping a piece of ribbon around the center of each of them. To finish up, I'm adding my farm dice into the display case, and with that, this project is complete. If you're new to my channel and you're stopping by for the first time, please consider clicking on that little red subscribe button below and leaving me a big thumbs up. And if you're one of my returning friends, you know I'm always so happy to see you. For this project, I'm using a Dollar Tree 8x10 frame along with 8 wooden skewers. I removed the frame's insert and glass along with the little metal holders. I'm placing one of my skewers lengthwise on the back of the frame, and I'm clipping it to size. When I was done, I clipped 2 more the same size. Then I did the exact same thing, but this time I measured it widthwise, and then I clipped 2 more. Using my hot glue gun, I'm attaching 3 skewers together. After I added the glue to the sides, I then added a little on the top to help keep them all attached. Then I did the exact same thing to my second set. With all my pieces put together, I'm now giving them a coat of white acrylic paint. With all my pieces dry, I'm using my ruler and I'm measuring my center point on the longest side. I'm finding my placement with my middle support, and then I'm hot gluing it into place. And then again, I use my ruler to measure my top center, and then I hot glue the ends and the middle for that piece as well. With all my pieces glued into place, I'm using the same shading technique as I did in my first project. I'm once again using my pencil and just kind of randomly rubbing it against the side of the frame. And when I'm done, I take my finger and I just kind of blend it in. This step is completely optional. If you prefer to leave it all white, that will look great too. When I'm done, I'm using some of this leftover ivy that I had on hand, and I'm going to accent the side of my frame. I'm hot gluing it on the top and then letting it cascade down on the side. And then I'm just continuing on and adding more ivy. I'm using ivy for this project, but you can use any greenery that you have on hand. I'm using some of these leaves that were on my amaranthus, and I'm just kind of hot gluing them here and there to fill out the ivy. The focal point of my window are these cute little cotton flower pods that I found at the Dollar Tree. And once again, using my glue gun, I'm placing on some hot glue and I'm adding them in between my ivy. For my bow, I'm using this pretty buffalo check ribbon that I got at Michael's, and you'll also need a piece of floral wire. I decided about how long I wanted my tail, and then I made myself a loopy bow. When I was done, I used my floral wire to attach it all together. I wrapped the wires around the window frame, and then I hot glued it into place. When I was done, I hot glued on a few more pieces of ivy, and with that, my farmhouse window is complete. I'm starting my coffee bar sign by using two 12-inch chunky wood slats that I picked up at the Dollar Tree. I need two because my sign is longer than 12 inches and they measure just about 1.5 inches in height. There are some small imperfections on the wood, so I'm using a piece of Dollar Tree sandpaper and I'm lightly sanding them down along with removing the UPC label. Now that my two pieces are sanded, I'm going to place them aside, and I'm using two packages of wooden letters from the Dollar Tree and spelling out the words coffee bar. With my two words spelled out, I'm going to find the spacing of the letters on my wooden slats. I measured roughly 1 inch in from the end and started my word coffee, and then allowed about 2 inches for the word bar. I gave myself another inch on the end and then marked where to cut the slat. I cut my shorter piece to size, and I also ran a small blade down the center about 1/4 inch deep on both pieces. I'm attaching the two pieces together using my Starbond thick glue. It's my go-to glue for all my wood projects, and it sets up super quick. If you'd like to check it out, I actually have the company linked below along with a coupon code. I'm using a piece of painter's tape to help hold the wood together as the glue sets up. The glue set up in about 5 minutes, but because the wood isn't perfect, you can still kind of see the seam. So for my dupe, I'm going to use some white acrylic paint and give my sign a complete coat. While my base is drying, I'm going to match the magnolia lettering and paint my two words coffee bar with some black acrylic paint. While they're drying, I can still see the seam on the base, so I'm going to use some of this Dollar Tree buffalo check ribbon and add on an accent. I'm wrapping it completely around the base and then cutting it to size. Then using my glue gun, I'm attaching it into place. Add the word coffee bar to the base of my sign. I'm first placing on my C and my R to get my spacing, and making sure to leave about 1 inch on each end. To attach all the letters permanently in place, I'm going to use my E6000. I'm adding a small amount to the opening on the top and then attaching my letters. As I'm adding the glue and the letters, the opening is so shallow that They kind of move a bit, so I just had to readjust them, but within a couple of seconds they set up. When I was done, I went back to the Magnolia site so I could compare prices, and believe it or not, this coffee bar sign was sold out. I believe theirs was somewhere in the 20s, and I did change mine up a bit, and mine cost about $5 using Dollar Tree supplies. I'm starting my first project by using a recycled piece of wood, and it measures 13 inches by 3.5. This piece of wood is pretty smooth, but I'm using a piece of sandpaper just to file down the front and the sides to remove any roughness. And now that I'm done, I'm giving the front and the sides a coat of white acrylic paint. You can always paint the back as well, but my sign's going to be facing the wall, so I'm just painting the front and the sides. Once my sign has dried, I'm going to be attaching some of these poster letters that I found at the Dollar Tree. And instead of the O, I'm going to be using this small silk daisy. I want my flower to sit flat on my sign, so I'm just snipping off the little stem part on the back. Because each of my letters have a different dimension, I'm just kind of eyeballing them into place. If you're more comfortable using a ruler, definitely use that to help you find your placement. My letters have a sticky back, but I'm going to be using a little bit of Mod Podge to help keep them in place. Using my paintbrush, I dabbed a little on the back of my letters, and then I pressed them into place. Once all my letters are in place, I'm then using my hot glue gun to attach my daisy. Now that the sign's done, you can leave it as is. I'm going to add on a ribbon accent. I'm using a 1/4 inch buffalo check ribbon that I got at Michael's, but they do sell a similar one at the Dollar Tree. I'm measuring a piece across the top, and I'm cutting 2 to size, and then I'm using my hot glue gun and I'm gluing them into place. If you don't have any recycled wood on hand, you can always repurpose one of the signs from the Dollar Tree. You can change up the colors and the flower to match your home decor, and I definitely think when the sign's complete, it has a high-end look. After my top and my bottom ribbon accents are attached, I'm then following the exact same instructions for my 2 side ribbons. I measured the side, I cut 2 ribbons, and then I hot glued them into place. If you want to hang your sign, you can always attach a sawtooth hanger to the back or even hot glue on a piece of wire. With all my ribbon added, my home sign is complete and ready to display. My cats actually helped me with this next project. I saved a bunch of their cat food cans, I removed the labels, and ran them through the dishwasher. I then used my spray paint, spraying 7 white and 8 black. I painted the insides of 2 white and 1 black because these will be on the top. I'm using some E6000 to attach them together. I'm using some of these white Dollar Tree rocks to give them some weight and balance them, but you can use anything you have on hand. I'm attaching 5 together, 3 black and 2 white. I'm adding a handful of the white stones into the black can, and this will be my bottom. To attach them together, I'm adding some E6000 inside the edge of my first can. Then, following the same instructions, I'm adding the E6000 and stacking them all together. When it comes to the top, make sure you're adding on the can that you sprayed on the inside. When this one was complete, I made 2 more candle holders, one with 6 cans and one with 3. To add some contrast, I'm using some white acrylic paint and splattering on the black cans. I added some to the end of an old paintbrush and then started tapping away. I added the paint until I had the results I was looking for, and then I moved on to the next 2 candle holders. I'm giving each a simple bow, and I cut 3 8-inch pieces of buffalo check ribbon. I folded a ribbon in half to find my center, then added a dot of hot glue on the fold. From there, I looped each side in and attached them. When I was done with my first, I then followed the same instructions for the other 2. Using the same buffalo check ribbon, I then cut 3 2-inch pieces. I placed a dot of hot glue in the center of that ribbon and then wrapped it around my loops. Now that I'm done, I have something that kind of resembles 3 bow ties. To accent the center of my bows, I glued on 2 pieces of greenery and a flower in the center. I then used my glue gun and attached one on the front of each candle holder. I want to raise the centers of each holder just a bit, so I'm using 3 empty spools of Dollar Tree ribbons. I tore off the top and the paper bottom to get to the cardboard ring. I added one to the top of each of my candle holders and then added in my Dollar Tree LED candles. And now they're ready to display. To start my DIY, I'm using one of these Hello wooden signs from the Dollar Tree. I removed the jute hanger and I'll be replacing it later. I want my sign to dry quickly, so I'm giving the front a coat with this white spray paint. It dried outside in about a minute, and now using my black acrylic paint, I'm going to paint the word hello. Now that my paint's dry, I'm replacing the jute hanger. For the ribbon accents, I'm just using some leftover cut ribbon pieces from past projects. Most of them are Dollar Tree ribbons, and they're about 12 inches or less. I'm using 8. I'm placing them together, and I'm just laying them on top of each other from the longest to the shortest. When I'm done, I'm wrapping a piece of floral wire around the center and then just twisting it together tightly. Now that I have them attached, I'm going to dovetail the ends, which is super easy. You just fold the end of the ribbon in half and then cut away at an angle. Now with my ribbons dovetailed, I'm removing the excess piece of wire. Using my hot glue gun, I attached the ribbon bunch to the top center of my sign. I'm using 6 stems of the greenery from this Dollar Tree bunch of flowers. I added some hot glue to the center of my ribbons and then placed 1 piece of greenery on each side. To finish up, I added a silk daisy in the center of the greenery. Now that I'm done, my Dollar Tree Farmhouse Hello sign is ready to hang. For my next DIY, I'm recycling an old candle jar. I cleaned it out and I removed all the wax. I'll also be using one of these little glass bowls. They sell them as a 4-pack and you can find them in the kitchen department at the Dollar Tree. I'm attaching them together with my E6000 and all I'm doing is placing the little bowl upside down, adding some E6000 and then placing my jar right on top. I let it set up overnight and now I'm using this painter's tape to tape off the sides. I placed a slice of tape on the side of my vase and then I attached it from top to bottom. I added another piece directly across from my first and this will allow me to keep my spacing. When I was done, I followed the exact same instructions and I attached 2 more pieces directly across from each other. I'm using some gray and white acrylic paint and I'm going to turn them into chalk paint using some baking soda. I'm mixing about a tablespoon of paint with about 3/4 of a tablespoon of baking soda. Then I just mixed them both together. After I mixed my gray, I then mixed my white. When I was done, I painted 2 sections on my vase gray and then I painted 2 sections white. I made sure to let my paint dry completely and then I peeled off the painter's tape. There was a little paint here and there that had kind of snuck under the tape, but I just scratched it off with my finger. I then baked my vase in the oven at 200 degrees for 30 minutes. I'm adding a jute accent around the top, so I'm starting with a little dab of hot glue. I'm placing in my jute and then I'm just wrapping it completely around the top of my vase. When I'm done, I'm adding another dot of hot glue to secure the end in place. I'm using these 4 wooden beads as an accent. I attached them on a long strand of jute and I tied them around the neck of my vase. I added in some flowers and with that, my project is complete. I'm starting this project by using 5 of the mini clay pots from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to be giving each of them a coat inside and out with my gray acrylic paint. Now that they're all painted and dry, I'm going to be using some of the black and white gingham and the buffalo check ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to be attaching the ribbon accents to the pots with my Mod Podge. I'm measuring and cutting 3 of the black and white gingham and 2 of the buffalo check ribbons. With all my ribbons cut to size, I'm now adding a generous amount of Mod Podge around the top of my flower pot. And when I'm finished, I'm then adding the ribbon around the top edge. I then continued on and covered all my pots with my ribbon. When I was finished, I then gave them all a coat of Mod Podge on the inside and the outside. I'm adding the word bloom to my pots and I'm using some letters that I already had on hand. These Dollar Tree letter stickers will also work great. I actually used them before in one of my first projects. My letters have a really sticky backing, so I've placed them on a piece of waxed paper, and I don't want them to be this gold sparkly color, so I'm going to use my white acrylic paint and give them all a coat. Now that my letters are dry, I'm going to attach them to the pots, and it's super easy because they have a sticky back. And I'm just going to place one on the front of each of my flower pots. I want to make a base for my pot, so I'm using one of these cardboard Dollar Tree signs that I had left over from the fall. I'm just using my white acrylic paint and I'm going to give the sides and the top a coat. Once it's dry, I'm using my black and white gingham ribbon and I'm attaching a piece across the top and onto the two sides. I then used my glue gun to tack it into place. With my black and white gingham added, I'm now going to add my buffalo check and I'm going to hot glue a piece completely around the base. With my pots and my base complete, I'm going to finish up my project by adding some greenery that I had left over in my stash. I added a bunch in each of my 5 pots, and with that, my project is complete. I'm starting this DIY by using a wooden tray that I picked up at the Goodwill for $1. I really like the open work on it and I thought it would work great for this project. I rescued this oval embroidery hoop from the trash and I only have the inside piece, so I'm pretty much guessing that's why they threw it away. I'm also going to be adding the wooden home sign from the Dollar Tree. Getting started, I'm giving my tray a coat of black acrylic paint. I wasn't super fussy when I was painting it because I'm going to be distressing it a little later on. I then used some light gray acrylic paint and I gave my oval embroidery hoop a complete coat. Now back to my project, I'm giving my Dollar Tree home sign a complete coat of white acrylic paint. While that's drying, I'm going to attach my embroidery hoop to the tray using my Starbond thick glue. It's my go-to wood glue and I have it linked below in case you'd like to check it out. I added some to the outside edge of my embroidery hoop and then I centered it on my tray. To give my tray a bit of a worn rustic look, I used a piece of sanding screen and I just randomly sanded around the outside edges of the tray. When I was done with my tray, I then sanded the edges of the wooden home to give it that same worn rustic look. When I'm done, I'm once again using my Starbond thick glue and I'm adding it to the back of my home sign. I'm then turning it over and I'm placing it in the center of my oval embroidery hoop. I'm adding a pop of color by using some Dollar Tree daisies and a few other flowers that I had in my stash. I didn't pre-plan where I was going to place them. I just used my hot glue gun and started attaching them to the side of the tray. I knew I was planning on adding a bow in the lower left corner, so as I was attaching the flowers, I made sure to leave enough room to add my bow. I'm using this pretty buffalo check ribbon that I found at Michael's for half price, and I'm measuring it against my home sign to see how long I want the tail to be. From there, to make my bow, I start twisting my ribbon into even-sized loops. If you'd like to know how I make it, after you check out the playlist, come on back over and I'll link one of my past videos below where I give step-by-step instructions. When I was done, I gave my bow a good fluffing and I twisted the tails around my finger to give them a corkscrew appearance. I cut off the extra wire And then I attached it with my glue gun to the corner of my tray. With my bow in place, I added a few more flowers here and there to fill out the left side of my home tray. Once I have all my flowers added, my thrifted home tray sign is complete. To start my farmhouse looped spheres, I'm using some bamboo embroidery hoops that I found at Michael's. I'm using 2 8-inch, 2 6-inch, and 2 4-inch for this project. They all came with price tags and stickers, so I removed those and made sure not to leave any residue behind. On top of the hoop where the hardware is placed, there's a plastic coating, and I left that on for now so it will help protect the area while I'm painting. Once all the stickers were removed, I opened each of the hoops, so I had a total of 4 in each size, and you may have to loosen up the metal screw just a bit to open them up. And now that I'm done, I have 12 in total. To paint them, I'm using my Waverly chalk paint in black, white, and elephant gray. I'm painting my 4 8-inch hoops with my white chalk paint, and I'm making sure to paint the outside, the inside, and covering all the edges. For my 6-inch hoops, I'm using my Waverly elephant gray paint, and I'm making sure when I'm painting my hoops not to get any on the metal hardware. And to finish up, I painted my 4-inch hoops with my black chalk paint. Attaching my hoops together, I'm starting with the white, and I'm using the 2 that have no hardware. And I'm simply placing one inside the other. I'm placing one of the hoops with the metal hardware over the 2 hoops that I just placed together, and I'm just kind of working it around to have the spacing be even between all 3 of the hoops. I'm having the tops and the bottoms meet up together, and I just kind of played around with it a little bit until I had them where I wanted, and then using the screw on the top, I just tightened it and it held them all in place. I placed my last white hoop over the sides of the attached 3. This part takes a bit of manipulation. I continued moving around the hoop until the hardware was centered on one of the flat sides. I once again tightened the screw, and the pressure on all 4 pieces are what holds it in place. For my 6-inch hoops, I removed that little plastic covering that came on the hardware. And once again, I placed together the 2 hoops that had no hardware. When I was done, I then once again added my 3rd, making sure that the hardware landed on the top, and I checked my spacing as I moved them around. Once I had them all in place, I tightened the screw on the top to hold the tension, and then added on my 4th hoop. I slid it over the top and around the sides of my 3 hoops. And once again, I just kind of jockeyed it into place, making sure there was even space on the top and the bottom. This time, instead of the hardware landing on a flat side, it was centered in between 2 hoops, so I screwed it together in place. One of the best things in making these spheres is there's no glue involved while you're making them, so you can continue manipulating them until you get them exactly where you want them. For my 4-inch hoops, I followed the same instructions as I did for my white and my gray, adding all 4 of the hoops together. Now that they're done, I want to give my black 4-inch spheres an industrial farmhouse accent, so I'm adding on some silver thumbtacks. I added one of the tacks where the two pieces of bamboo are pressed together. I'm adding one tack to the outside hoop where it meets up with the inside hoops. This bamboo is pretty tough, so I did use my pliers to push it through both pieces. The end of the tack did not poke through, so I didn't have to clip them off, and then I touched up each one with the same matching black chalk paint. These embroidery spheres are held together with tension, but because mine will most likely become a gift, I'm going to attach them with some E6000. I added a small amount on the end of my paintbrush and attached the two pieces together. To help hold them in place after I added the glue, I did use some clothespins, but honestly, this step is completely optional. When my white was complete, I then followed the same instructions for the gray, and my black were attached using the tacks. Now that I'm done, my 3 farmhouse embroidery hoop spheres are ready to display. Getting started, I'm using this old Christmas sign that I picked up at a yard sale for 50 cents. All the accents were kind of broken and falling off, so I just removed them from the sign. When I was done, I did my best to remove most of the glue, and then I removed the hanger. The sign still has some glue residue and a few rough spots, so I'm just using a piece of sandpaper and giving it a quick sanding. Now that I'm done, I'm using my white acrylic paint and I'm giving the front a coat. What I love about this makeover is that you can either stand it up or you can hang it, so I'm going to be hanging mine, and that's why I'm not painting the back. Now that my paint is dry, I want to give it more of a rustic look, so using my sandpaper, I'm sanding around the outside edges of the Z, in between the slats, and around the outside edges of the sign. To make the flower box on my sign, I'm using one of these wooden crates from the Dollar Tree. I want it to match my sign, so once again, I'm using my white acrylic paint and I'm giving it a coat. Now that the paint has dried, I'm using my pencil and I'm just outlining the 2 stripes on the front side of the box. You can always paint the stripe in the middle, but I'm using some of this buffalo check ribbon from the Dollar Tree. I wrapped it around the front and each side and then cut it to size. I then used my glue gun on the front and the sides to attach the ribbon. Now that I'm done, I'm going to attach the 2 pieces together, and I'm using my E6000. I added some to the bottom of the backward Z, attached the box, and let it set up overnight. I'm adding the word welcome to my sign, and I'm using one of the metal welcome signs from the Dollar Tree. I'm using my black acrylic paint, and I'm going to end up giving it 2 coats, but you can always spray it with some spray paint. Once my 2 coats have dried, and sometimes the paint will scrape off of the metal, so what I like to do is follow it up with a coat of Mod Podge. It only takes a few minutes for it to dry, so I'm turning the word welcome over, and once again using my E6000, I'm adding some to the back. To attach it, I simply made sure that it was centered on the top part of my sign. So this can actually stand up on its own, but I want mine to hang, so I'm going to be using a piece of this nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. I turned my sign over, decided about how long I wanted my hanger to be, and then I just cut it to size. I used my hot glue gun and added 2 dots to the back, and then attached the 2 ends of the rope. To help keep my hanger in place, I'm cutting 2 short pieces out of the Dollar Tree burlap ribbon. I then place some hot glue on the sides of my rope and attach the ribbon over it. With my hanger in place, I'm going to be adding in a piece of the Sahara from the Dollar Tree. Mine's in green, but they also sell this in white. I added some hot glue to the bottom of the box and I attached the Sahara in place. To finish up, and if you've been following any of my videos this year, for some strange reason, I don't know why I've had like a thing for daisies. And I had these on hand. You can find them at the Dollar Tree. They sell them in different colors, along with some greenery, and I'm just adding them to the box. I wasn't super fussy when I was adding them. I trimmed off the ends when needed to make them fit, and I just kind of placed them in here and there. Once all my flowers were in place, I then used a piece of wired buffalo check ribbon and I made a simple bow accent. I trimmed off the ends, and then using my hot glue gun, I attached the bow to the front of my daisy box. I'm so happy with this makeover. I think it came out so pretty, and I love the little rustic element to it. And now that I'm done, it's ready to hang. I hope you enjoyed making my 12 favorite farmhouse DIYs. And if you're new to my channel and you're thinking, hey, I'd like to come back and hang out with her again, don't forget to click that little red subscribe button below. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I'll see you soon. Bye, everybody.